Rev up your engines!
All right, if you have any Cooper tires, you better watch out, because Cooper's recalled 430,000 light truck tires because the sidewalls are bulging, they might explode. Sidewalls might completely separate and come apart, and all the air gets out of them. Now, the tire recall isn't going to start until March 15th. These tires were produced between February 2018 and December 2019. If you wonder if yours is one of these tires, you can call the company, 1-800-854-6288. You can get the numbers off your tires, and they can tell you whether they're covered or not. Always check if you own one of those tires. Wooden Bit says, I found a guy selling the 99 Blazer for $500. He's been up front. He says it's got a radiator leak, the front suspension on the passenger side is shot. I want to buy this to practice do-it-yourself. Replacing the radiator shocks won't cost you more than $170. You think it's a good thing? Here's the one thing. Get in it and drive it. And if it shifts gears and rolls down the road, go. It'd be a great project. But if it doesn't, the transmission is shot, it's not worth buying because you want to do it yourself. And rebuilding those automatic transmission is not a do-it-yourself job. It is a very complex thing to do. So, it goes down the road by itself, what the heck? Buy it. It'll be a fun thing. Like you say, look, $170 for the radiator and shocks and struts. You can get a discount on all the parts. So you learn a lot of stuff on it. But make sure that transmission shifts good and the engine runs. And if it does and the engine doesn't, throttle knocks, go ahead and buy it. Just how 20311 says, Scotty, I got a 2008 Jetta automatic transmission with 200,000 miles. My fan fuse keeps blowing when I put the AC on. The AC doesn't blow. Something is shorting it out. Now, it's a Volkswagen. A zillion things could possibly go wrong. But try this, because that's normally what it is. Go to where the fan motor is, and there's the plug that connects the fan motor to the wiring harness. Unplug it, put a new fuse in, then turn it on. If it doesn't blow it anymore, it means the fan motor shorted out. Very simple test. If it still blows it, good luck then. It could be the computer relay for it, it could be the wiring, it could be all kinds of things. But normally it's the fan motor. So if you go and unplug the fan motor, put a new fuse and turn it on, it doesn't blow, you know. The only thing you did was disconnect the fan, so the fan is what's shorting the stupid thing out. I see that all the time on those. It says, I got an old car where a replacement fuel pump costs $600. I think they're clogged with deposits because it's set. What can dissolve them? All right. Well, there's nothing really strong enough that you can just pour in a gas tank that's going to dissolve them, or it'll probably eat up everything in your fuel system, all the rubber hoses. But if you don't mind taking it apart and getting the pump out, there are some really good cleaners you can get that remove deposits, or you can soak them overnight. Like you could get the pump assembly, put it in like a sealed drum of Varsol. You know, you could get a little like a quart container and put Varsol, any kind of good cleaner in, and soak the pump in it because it's soaked in the gas tank anyways, and you might be able to get the deposits out. What the heck? But there's nothing you can really pour in a gas tank that's going to work, because the regular cleaners aren't strong enough to get deposits out of a pump. And if you get something that is strong enough, it could destroy the whole system. So you'd want to take the pump out and then soak it, and maybe that'd fix it. You never know. And if it's that bad, you might see they're clogging the intake, and you could get a little ice pick and pick little deposits off and shake them off too, because normally you'll see them blocking the intake. There's only a little pressure sucking in, but there's a lot of pressure pushing out. So the deposits generally aren't on the push out side, but on the intake, because it only has like -2-3 psi sucking it in. All the pressure's coming out the other end. Normally the pressure end won't get deposits on it. Rod said, Scotty, I bought a 21 Mazda 3 hatch automatic from the dealer. It had 10 miles when I bought it. Now it's pushing 2.6 thousand. I regret not getting the manual transmission. I was wondering, is there anything I could do, like trade it in? You'll have the screws put you in. If you trade it in, you're going to lose your shirt. You'll probably lose at least 30 to 40% of what you paid. Now, you should have road tested them. That's how I tell people. If you're actually going to buy a new car, go to the dealer and road test a bunch of them. It costs nothing. It's free. And say, I want to test the standard. I want to test an automatic. If they don't have a standard, say, well, find me a place that does. I want to drive a standard to see how it works. Because there's a big difference between an automatic and a standard in a little bitty car like that. With the standard, they're a bunch of fun. With an automatic, they're kind of boring and kind of slow. You're really kind of between a rock and a hard place now, though. I would say live with it unless you want to lose your shirt, because you're going to lose your shirt if you trade it in. You know, unless you could find somebody who had a standard transmission one that's willing to trade, because maybe they didn't like shifting and they'll go for an automatic. You never know what you're going to find in the real world. But if you actually go back to the dealer, you're screwed. You're going to lose a ton of money. Capone says, I was wondering how energy from gas that normally burned in a catalytic converter could be harnessed by using a catalytic coating on the tops of the pistons and the cylinders, just on the non-contact. I haven't found anything on this. All right, I'm sure somebody at some point in time tried it, but it's got too many downsides. sides. One, if you ever looked inside a catalytic converter, the honeycomb, it's a large surface area. There's a bunch of it there, and the gas flows through it. It's a large area. It weighs stuff. You can't put weight on top of a piston moving up and down. Then it would make the engine less efficient. You want the pistons to be as light as possible. Plus, they're compressing all the time. It would probably break from the vibrations and the pressure and the ignition. So, I mean, it's an interesting thought you came up with, but it kind of reminds me of when they made the Chevy Vegas and they burnt oil like no tomorrow because they put in cast aluminum blocks and they were too cheap to put stainless steel inserts for the pistons to ride in. After 15, 20,000 miles wore off, and then they burnt oil like crazy. So, I mean, it was an interesting concept you came with, but there's too many negative physical things going against it that they'd ever make something like that. Be counterproductive to gas mileage, and it would break vibration and the explosions inside. Because take a catalytic converter, it doesn't have explosions inside. Well, it's not supposed to. That's why if your car runs bad and it's getting explosions, your check engine light flashes on and off. That's warning you it's going to ruin the catalytic converter. So get your car fixed. Big reason it would never happen, that they'd coat inside the pistons. 69 Camaro says, I got my wife a 2018 RAV4 with the key ignition. We live in Ohio and I want a keyless system to remote start it, but I went to the dealer and they said you can only do this with a car that has a smart key system that doesn't use the key, that uses a remote, and we have a keyed ignition system, and so they can't put it on a car. What do you recommend? All right, well, when I recommend never put a system like that in, you don't want to add a system to a car that wasn't built with it. There are systems out there that you can change your key system and put a remote system in, but I have had customers have it done and it led to nothing but grief as time went on. It's so complex to set up that it'll make your head spin, and then it will break and you'll be stranded in the middle of nowhere and you wish you'd never put the stupid thing in the first place. It can be done, and I've seen it done, but unfortunately, they often break down. I only advise the factory systems. I don't even advise having somebody install at the dealer one on a car that didn't come with it, because I've seen them screw it up too. My son's wife has a RAV4. They had the same thing. They bought it that way, and it's been nothing but problems. The system has caused problems with no starting at times in Boston where it's cold. So I'd leave it the way it is. Just start it up, go back in a house or something, have a spare key, lock it or something. You don't want to switch it over to an aftermarket system. Let me tell you, you'll regret it in the long run. I've had customers do it, and they all regretted it when that system broke down and they were stranded. Nobody could get the car going, and they had to tow it into a mechanic and spend a fortune taking the stupid system off or repairing it with another system. Because those aftermarket systems, when they break, nobody knows how to fix them. You just have to throw them away and then put another system in its place. They're not repairable. No information on how to repair them, and nobody knows how to work on them. So I just leave it alone. Now here's an interesting bit of news. Those big Navistar electric trucks, they're going to make electric 18-wheeler trucks, are going to be powered by GM fuel cells. So now everybody who was laughing at Toyota saying, oh, look, they're behind on electric cars, they're doing hydrogen fuel cell cars. Well, here, GM is going to be making hydrogen fuel cells for these big 18-wheelers. Now, the hydrogen fuel cells are good for 18-wheelers because power to weight. If you have lithium-ion batteries, they weigh a lot. The bigger you make the trucks, the more it has to pull itself. It's very inefficient. They have to be recharged. Takes a lot of time. Hydrogen fuel cells, they just need more hydrogen. And they claim that these will have a range of 500 miles, but they can be refilled in 15 minutes because you're just regassing them with hydrogen. Now, of course, it makes sense to make it commercial big vehicles because then you can have hydrogen refilling stations wherever your trucks are going to go, and with a 500-mile range, they can go an awful long time. Well, GM is going to be the one that's providing them the fuel cells. Now, these aren't going to hit the road till 2024, but 2022, they're going to be testing them out on actual roads. GM calls them Hydrotech fuel cells, and each power cube has 300 fuel cells in it, so they're stackable. They can put in as many or as little as they need. Pretty interesting technology. GM and fuel cells for the big trucks. It's going to be a big battle over who's going to build them, who's going to make money on it, what particular scenario is going to do it. Water's H2O. It's all over the place, right? So, and hydrocarbons. So there's lots of hydrogen around, right? It's not like lithium where you're going to run out of this stuff. So, old Scotty talking about hydrogen fuel cells. Looks like I'm hitting the nail on the head a lot more than other people thought. Check this out. Volkswagen introduced a now research and development program for autonomous driving, which they say will be introduced in 2025. But if you look at the sketch of what the production version of this ID Buzz is going to be, it looks like a modernized Volkswagen camper van. It really does. You know, they're going for their old retro, but then it'd be autonomous electric vehicles. So kind of interesting looking. It really, the front end looks like it came off one of the micro buses. It has the quarter windows at the A-pillar. It looks a lot like a micro bus. This bus is set to enter production in 2023, which means it's going to be made in 2022. So this sketch that they have now is probably pretty close to what the things are actually going to look like. It's going to be an autonomous ride-hailing Uber-type system using the ID Buzz. And they're going to have it in regular cities across Europe is where they're going to start it out. They're going to be using level 4 autonomous systems. So, as you can imagine, they might be a little bit late when it actually comes out to the public. But hey, they're going to test it out in Europe first. So I say, great, yeah, test it out over there. When you get the bugs out of it, then bring it over here, you know. Bring it over here after the bugs. Maybe it'll take you 100 years, but get the bugs out first, then bring it over here. It is cool, though. It looks like an old microbus. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.